As we explore the future of retail in all of its various forms, we're always excited to speak to interesting solution providers in the space that are helping connect the dots, particularly as we think about omni-channel and all of the data that's necessary for brands and businesses to understand their consumers, continue that relationship post-purchase. I'm so excited today to have a conversation with a solution provider named Adrich. So I'm really excited today to be speaking with Adhithi Aji, who is the CEO and founder of a platform called Adrich. Adhithi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Scott, for having us. Excited to be here.
Wonderful. So I know we'll get a little bit into the solution that you're providing and some of the benefits at the end or within the context of this conversation. But I think just to kind of start us off at maybe that like 10,000 foot level, as you think about the sort of consumer today and the changing behaviors and needs that they have, I'm curious to know what are some of the biggest consumer shifts that you're tracking and particularly paying attention to?
Yeah, specifically today's day and age consumer are expecting more than just the product, right? In the consumer products industry specifically, it goes beyond a disinfectant wipe or just the transaction-based product. Today, it's more the experience that the brand can create around what the consumers are expecting. They are expecting an experience beyond just the product. So whether it's a food and beverage or whether it's a cleaning product, across the spectrum, the brands can differentiate themselves based on how they can elevate the consumer's experience when interacting with that product. So that said, beyond the taste of the product, beyond the price point, beyond the packaging. It's the overall 360-degree experience. More so now with COVID, right? Post the pandemic, one of the biggest things on every consumer's mind is safety and safety of them, their family, and all the people at home. So there is the shift with consumers where when they start using products, for example, in the disinfectant category, a brand who can go the extra mile to educate the consumers and keep them and their family safe will help the brand differentiate and give a better presence in the consumer's lives, invariably increasing the loyalty. Similarly, if you look at food and beverage, in-home consumption has changed. People are snacking more in some cases, but some others are becoming health conscious. So brands can take this opportunity to help consumers adhere to a regimen, help in a way with their products and with the experience that they create, how to elevate and help the consumer achieve their goals. And the third angle we are also seeing is consumers are becoming very conscious of the environment. They do want to be very mindful of what they're using. For example, reducing single-use plastics to enable better sustainability. That's a trend we are seeing, and brands who have this purpose of achieving sustainability, consumers are being driven towards those brands compared to others. So all these three elements of macro trends of consumers is what we're seeing in the shift in their behavior. But more importantly, we create the digital connection between the brand, retailer, and consumers. And that's how they can leverage Adrich to be able to enable all these three elevated experiences and go the extra mile to help the consumer.
I love that idea of creating a 360-degree experience, particularly, and is it safe to say that right now the majority of your clients are all in the consumer packaged goods space at the end of the day?
Yes, most of them are in the CPG, consumer product goods. We do have brands in consumer electronics as well. So those are the two broad
Got
categories
it. Got
that
it.
we
And
operate.
under, understanding that there's a need to, for all brands, but particularly, if we're just talking about CPG right now, for these companies to try to find a way to create a more direct relationship with their consumers. And it sounds like your platform ultimately is providing that connectivity so that either on the shelf or once an item is purchased, there's additional opportunities to sort of like engage with that consumer around those touch points. So I wonder, just thinking again, like, putting on the lens of your clients, what are some of the sort of big challenges that they're ultimately turning to you to solve for them?
Yeah, one of the things that we've worked with brands is their ultimate goal is trying to build products that suit consumer needs, right? So where we come in is to really help them post purchase, where today they have data up until the retail store, but once the product leaves the store, it's kind of a black box. So our core competence is to enable access to usage data on how consumers are interacting with their products inside of the consumer homes, which is post purchase, and give them visibility into the whole journey of uh, consumers from point of purchase to point of consumption and to the point when they run out and reorder. So we're enabling a digital connection when consumers run out and need more product. So that's kind of the realm where we help brands, and also keeping consumers in mind, because ultimately they get the convenience. Now, when we work with brands, one of the biggest challenges is that gap in really learning about their consumers. Because when you know your consumer, you know the unmet needs, you know what to build, and you build things that will actually serve those needs. So that's the core of what we do. We enable the whole uh, data that can help them understand to individual consumer patterns as well as at the aggregate level of how consumers are interacting with the product. And specific business challenges that we've solved for is one of the common themes is consumers are not using the product per instruction, for example. And we help brands use our two-way communication to educate the consumers if they're not using the product correctly, and help consumers also get the best efficacy of the product. So they don't switch brands, or they don't underutilize the product and get the maximum value for the purchase that they made. So this way, it increases brand loyalty. The other thing that we've also solved for is helping brands understand consumer needs and helping them drive usage. For example, regimen building, right? If there's a vitamin product category, for example, if they have to take 2 times a day, it's kind of that friendly nudge to get them onto a compliance so they can actually get the best efficacy from the product. So that's kind of driving usage behavior use case. And the other aspect we have worked with brands is where they understand where consumers falling off in the journey of usage of the product, and using those the insights to change product development, change certain aspects in the product that will invariably educate the consumers and help them get the best out of the product that they use.
Amazing. So on one level, there's this sort of passive gathering of data to kind of close that gap, as you said, once a product gets into somebody's home and sort of understanding those usage patterns. And then there's that next level, which is then turning that into a sort of communication touch point to then activate all of these other experiences.
Exactly.
That's great. So just now, kind of like practically speaking, talking a little bit about the platform itself, can you talk a little bit about the technology that's enabling this, and then ultimately like how that, if there's a brand that's listening in, how does this practically kind of like move from your solution to then like integrating that into their packaging or what have you?
Yes. So the platform was built keeping both brands, retailers, and consumers in mind. And we wanted to make it in a way that it's seamless in terms of the consumer experience, plus also for the brands to actually get it onto their products, and for retailers also to benefit from the data and the product itself. So the whole platform has it's a Internet of Things, so IoT and AI, mix of the two technologies. And the IoT piece is a hardware, and it's a connected smart label, which basically adheres. It's a peel and stick, or you can embed it into the product. It goes outside of the product and has unique sensing capabilities that basically track usage. So when the product is being used, how often, and it also detects when consumers run out, and talks Bluetooth and gets the data into our cloud autonomously. And basically, at that point, the brands get the data and a dashboard that they can see the usage in real time. And we also have APIs that integrate into any e-commerce platform, and the Amazon integration also is the latest development. So we can route that notification for reorder into any retailer or e-commerce. And the third part is we enable the two-way communication. So once the digital link is established between the brand and the consumer, they can use our platform to really have that two-way conversation. And on the other hand, for the consumer, it's really when they run out, the next bag of dog food will show up. When you run out of coffee or shampoo, you'll find one at the door. The next level of zero touch shopping. That's the convenience we're bringing for the consumers. And with the two-way communication, we have also found that consumers love to actually give feedback to the brands. They want to be part of the co-creation of brands, and we've seen that as being a big adoption from the consumer as well. So talking of the technology, it's both hardware, software, and data, and we enable a call to action for the brands to engage with their consumers.
So I'm curious about it's fascinating, and I love all the various use cases in terms of that sort of in terms of that two-way communication piece. How does that happen? Is that essentially then, like, what does that look like from a consumer point of view? Like, are they getting a notification through a text message, or how does that, like, does the brand have to have a point of contact for that consumer, or how does that work exactly?
Yes. So we have different touch points. There is the text and the email. So basically, when a consumer runs out, if, for example, now we have integrated with Amazon, so if they have the Alexa app, basically they get a notification saying, hey, you're running out. Do you want to reorder? Or they have the option to auto reorder. So it is completely automated system. And that's the way that one is Alexa would be the touch point, but then we also have text messages where if the consumer is opted in, they can get text messages from the brands. And at any point in time, the consumer has control. So we definitely take the opt-in route, and they can either choose to get the notifications from the brands or opt out of that.
Excellent. Okay, I see. So that makes sense. So this is ultimately, the opt-in is so huge as a part of this, but the brand is ultimately then in charge of communicating or is essentially marketing to the consumer that this is now a capability that their products have, and then the consumer can then opt into that experience at the end of the day.
Correct. Exactly. That's one of the biggest things with connected products. That is where the digital transformation happens, where what's a normal physical product becomes digital, and consumers and brands can then use that linkage to convert.
And then talk a little bit about, I know you have the Amazon piece is the newest sort of component of the business. Talk about, how that sort of integration has happened. I don't know if how practically that works, and I don't know if you can name any brands that are participating currently, but I would just love to hear that sort of journey a little bit.
Sure. So it was a very strategic goal with both when we work with CPGs as well as Amazon has the Dash replenishment service. So basically, there are three parts when we want to do this whole smart replenishment, right? There's the whole connected products piece, and then there is fulfillment when consumers run out. There needs to be a fulfillment service that can actually refill the product. And the third piece is the payment. So this was a very strategic partnership with Amazon where Adrich can help brands build those connected products and use Amazon as a fulfillment partner as well as taking care of the payments. So now you have a full suite turnkey solution that can basically get automatic replenishment to the brands. And that is where the real benefit is, where Adrich and Amazon can provide this together to CPG. Now, with Adrich specifically, we come in a way that they don't need to change their assembly line. The brands don't need to change the assembly line. We are able to create connected products with the peel and stick label, so their existing products can be changed into connected products, which enables them to get to market pretty quickly. They don't have to spend millions to change any kind of mold or anything, and we scale together. So we learn together, we launch, and then we scale together. That's kind of the benefit where the partnership really worked. And we have a range of Fortune 500 companies that we are working with. It's across product categories, right from pet food to cleaning products to also consumer electronics.
Excellent. And I, again, like thinking about this from the standpoint of CPG, I alluded to this at the beginning. There's that desire for, any brand nowadays to want to have that direct relationship with the consumer. But to your point, not having a solution like yours, which enables that sort of that additional touch point, and then the sort of like infrastructure in place to actually then literally deliver a new product, or the capabilities to continue that communication. It's interesting to see that sort of play out and how that works from a practical point of view. I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but in terms of, again, that sort of like consumer experience, are there any really interesting sort of use cases that you have seen or that your partners are working with in terms of like taking that product and turning it into a touch point beyond, let's say, a utility like the reordering, like I don't know if anything comes to mind in that case.
So we one of the biggest learnings with launching this with consumers, of course, the aha moment when the next bag of pet food shows up and you don't have to lug around a heavy bag of pet food at 11 in the night when your pet is hungry. That's one of the biggest aha moments. But as we launched it, we started seeing that consumers are very curious to see their own consumption data. So that's the other part where, for example, in specifically the health and wellness category, very health conscious consumers, instead of manually entering their consumption, the product does it for them, right? That's one other use case. And secondly, going by the sustainability angle, that has also helped where we have seen the refills take traction, which means that brands are sending out the connected products with our technology on it. And when the consumers run out, it's a refill pouch or a bag that comes in that consumers refill. And that way, brands also achieve their sustainability goal, and consumers love it because they are reducing single use plastics. So that's another use case where with that whole milkman model returning, we're seeing that consumers are taking that additional effort to actually refill. They prefer that rather than throwing away single-use trash, because what one of the biggest, that's a big consumer behavior change, and we're seeing that consumers are willing to take the effort to adopt that change.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I love that whole angle around. I mean, the sort of notion of the quantified self has been around for a long time, and I know that particularly within the health and wellness space, as you mentioned, that sort of like food tracking piece has always been a friction point because it's such a manual process. And imagining that being like the next version of that, and if you're a brand in that space, it sort of opens up interesting avenues for conversation with consumers as well. And then, again, it reminds me, you've mentioned this a few times, but that sort of notion of then turning the product into a communication point for the consumer back to the brand, which I think is really interesting, again, to sort of register feedback and that being a successful way to build a relationship with consumers, I think is quite interesting. And was that always something that you had sort of foreseen as a capability within the platform, or was that a learning sort of like along the way?
Yeah, so the platform has evolved. It's partly a vision and partly also learning, and most importantly, keeping brands, retailers, and consumers in mind. Because at the end of the day, technology can be built. It has to be built to serve a purpose. So along the way, it's a mix of what we have envisioned and learning along the way, because we want to be nimble and we are continuously making the platform updates and really listening to consumers and understanding what the new age digital transformation will look like and how to make that happen.
I mean, that's a great lesson for anyone who's listening in. I mean, just to sort of, recognize that putting a product out into the marketplace, there needs to be a room for it to sort of evolve and improve over time. And so the having that flexibility and that approach is so great. I guess, last question is, as you look ahead to the Adrich platform as it sort of exists now, do you have any sort of things on the horizon that you're currently working on or thinking about in terms of how the platform will evolve?
Yeah, so one of the most exciting updates is the capabilities that we have added. We were already helping brands who have a direct-to-consumer distribution channel, helping them get the connected e-commerce solution, right, which enables a whole new business model of need-based subscriptions. So we want to really help brands not only change the way they build products through connected products and engage their consumers, but also look at different business models that goes beyond the traditional, for example, subscription business models. And there are different ways you can engage the consumer beyond that one and only transaction. And invariably, increasing brand loyalty and brand growth. So that has been the connected e-commerce, which is one of the first of its kind that we have launched, and it's live in market in Europe with some D2C brands. But also we are excited about our integration with Amazon, which adds one more capability in the capability set, where we not only allow direct to consumer channel, but we are now enabling retail partnerships should brands want to use and scale Amazon, for example, and get the rollout and use both their existing distribution channels and generate new ones. So that's kind of the second part. But most importantly, with the consumers now driving in the new digital age and post-COVID, most of them ordering online and preferring the convenience of the online shopping, and also being able to go to the store now. That kind of trend from the consumers is really helping us change the platform, and also making sure that the data that we get from the consumers is being used for their good, in that brands can build better products. But today we are focused on consumption data, the data that surrounds usage of products and how consumers interact. But long term, we think that once this data is enabled and leveraged across other data sets, it will generate more valuable insights. So brands can now understand how weather, for example, is impacting consumption. So there's a whole evolvement of the data that can be tied into other data sets to generate more insights.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously that context piece is fascinating to sort of like bring that into the conversation, and then I can envision, I mean, at some level, and again, I don't know how this would work from a practical point of view, but once you have all these like insights across brands and types of products, that there's probably something interesting around those sort of like mixed use cases and things like that create a lot of rich information that can be shared with partners going forward as well. So
exactly. Yep. So we've seen product correlations, right? Where with the consumption data, we've seen some products are used after certain products. So those kind of insights will now enable retailers to use that insight to be able to stock the store in a way that makes a consumer shopping experience better, right? That's just one example of how all that translates back into making the consumer lives easy.
Amazing. Wow, that's really exciting. This is super cool. I really appreciate you taking the time to sort of like walk through that, and really interested to, as a purely from a consumer point of view, to get a chance to use a product that has your technology built into it. So thanks, and we'll look forward to hearing during our next conversation what's happening at Adrich. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. It's not too far. We're getting zero touch shopping to you very soon. So next time you run out of coffee, you'll find one at the door.
All right. Amazing.
But that's coming very soon.
That's great. Perfect.
Thank you for having us.